Hello, good evening and welcome to the Now Debate. I'm Jared Walters here with my good friend Richard Oliver, and we have Angela Mitchell with us. It is Mitchell, I have pronounced it right now, Angela, have I? Yeah, that's okay then. With us for today's show, and today we are going to be talking about bridging the gap between this world and the world of the afterlife. Angela, you are a medium, psychic, as you've discussed to me, has come from a very interesting background, which I'll let you give a bit of a talk about that. But would you like to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and basically let us know what you're all about, and we'll kind of start from there basically and just start having a chat from there on in. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent.
So,
where do you want to begin? When did you first started hearing, seeing, sensing, spirit, that sort of thing? Where does this sort of story begin for you?
well, my story began as a child, and a lot of natural mediums will probably have experiences as a young child, as a toddler. I remember very, very early on that I had visitations, like I could see, had sort of dreams very involved. I felt there were times where I felt I was rising out of my body. And now I know that's an out of body experience. And I would see faces of people. But it wasn't until I was about 9 or 10 years old when I came home from school. And growing up in Malaysia, I suppose I should start from the fact that I'm actually born in Malaysia. And the morning school finished about 1 o'clock. And so I rushed home, jumped out of the bus, opened the gates, and our gardens in Malaysia is at the front. So opened the gate, locked it, and then for some reason I looked up to my right, and we have very big trees in the front of the garden, and my neighbor, yes, I think he was 70, 80 years old, but when you're 9, 10 years old, everyone looks really ancient. Anyone
Yeah, they do.
So I figure he was about 70, 80 years old, and he was set up on the tree, one of the branches of the tree. And he looked really happy. He was in his pajamas, barefoot, and his foot was just swinging as he was sat in the branch, and he was waving at me. So I was, as a child, my natural instinct was to obviously wave back and to be happy, smile back. And I went into the house and I told my mum. So instead of being happy that this elderly neighbor who actually had been in hospital for a couple of weeks, I hadn't seen him for a while, and I heard that he was ill, that he was sat up on a tree, well enough to sit on a tree and smile and be happy. She was upset with me. And then she kind of dragged me by the ears and pushed my face up against the fence. And through the fence, I could see there was a coffin. There was an enlarged picture of him. And there were a lot of people in the house, very upset. Obviously, he had passed away while I was at school. And they were holding a wake. But I remember, trying to sort of piece this together, going, well, if he's dead, why am I seeing him up on that tree?
Mm.
As a child, I was trying to make sense of it, and also it felt as if had been in a bubble where I walked into the. I did not see all those people. I didn't see the coffin. I didn't see all of this. All I could see was him on that tree and myself. It was like being in a dream,
Mm.
and obviously then I was like, oh wow, okay. And my mum was a bit upset that I was seeing him. And she said, no, don't look at him, don't look at him. But as a child, your instinct is to look,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and you're trying. And I was trying to, in my head, trying to understand this. I'm going, surely it's a good thing that he's happy.
Yeah.
That he's up on the tree and he's happy. Now here, this is where the story gets quite interesting because I lived in a very tight-knit community. So all the houses, we all knew each other. I mean, I lived there from when I was about 5, and we had that open door policy, I suppose, in the old days.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the 70s, where people would just walk into other people's homes. And as a child, I was just allowed to just wander around. So I knew everyone. And after this incident, a lot of the elderly people in the neighborhood started to pass in that year. So instead of going to weddings, we had a series of funerals. After the third or fourth funeral, where each time I would go sit in the house and I would be able to see clearly in HD level, and because you guys understand HD to
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
TV, don't do the clarity.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I could see very clearly spirit, but there was a slightly different edge to them, like even the pause. It was interesting how I could see them so clearly and so clearly defined. And I would go, why are you all crying? I can see, Auntie sat there and she looks very happy, and she's, you know she looks radiant. And people would see that as me saying stupid things or scaring people. And it instead of bringing happiness and to the people that were mourning the person that passed, it upset everyone. So after the third or fourth funeral, someone had a word with my mom and said, "Can you please not bring Angela?"
Oh, bloody hell.
Oh.
So at the tender age of 9, heading on to 10, I was given my first ESBO.
God.
I was like, "Don't bring Angela to a funeral," Um,
I can
and
so identify with this.
Yeah.
I've been in that position so many times, where you just can sense something. And I think sometimes, do you ever find that people, you don't even have to say anything, and sometimes you don't even have to know what you do, they just have that sense that you can tap into something or connect. It's like as if there's like, they'll do one of two things: they'll either stray away from you or they'll tell you everything. And it's
yeah,
like,
I remember this one. It's funny that you say that. I have this one really vivid situation, which was actually quite strange and then funny afterwards. I did when I was starting, in the UK, I was doing some fairs and so on, and I thought it was a brilliant idea to do some kind of a shabby chic fair, and I sat there at my table, and funny enough, I was just trying it. I just wanted to try and see how to work with the public, um, and um, and I had this lady next to me, and she was selling sort of recycled furniture and things like that. Now she was very fussy, like it was a rainy day, so there were puddles. When people came to set with me, they would leave footprints, a bit of wet footprints and so on, and she would complain, saying that it was encroaching on her space. So I was thinking to myself, gosh, you are very, very negative. And then she would when I had a lapse between the next customer, I noticed that she would just stand to my right and she would just stood there staring down at me. And it made me quite uncomfortable, but also very curious. And then towards the end, she made a complaint against me saying, you shouldn't have this sort of people attending these fairs. And the lady that runs the fair, and she related this to me, and she said to her, what kind of people? Oh, those mediums and people that can read your mind. So when she said that to me, I said, that is strange, because I'm a medium and a psychic, not a mind reader. I'm certainly no Darren Brown. But why was she so uncomfortable? And she said, well, her mother apparently died a few months before, and she had a very bad relationship with the mother. So then I understood it as she was uncomfortable because she felt that because I know something, like I can tap into that relationship, and it was like me being there was representative of the afterlife or something. And I just thought, how ridiculous is that?
But it's mad, because I've noticed that, especially like sort of since going into this full time. It's like people think that you automatically know something. It's like, well, for the start, we're in a room probably full of about 20 or 30 people, and do you realise the noise that would be if I could read everyone's thoughts? Secondly, I don't really want to know your thoughts. I don't care, if you... I don't mean that in a nasty way, but like, literally, what's going on in your life at the moment? I'm human. I have a life of my own. I have people I care about and worried about. I have a job and I'm here to do it. If I try my best to be, as aware of the wider implications of things as possible. But as far as your personal life, I don't really... It's not my business to know about it, and I try and explain this to people when I work with them as well. It's like, a lot of the time, you're expecting me to pick things out of thin air, and they don't realise the spirit actually respect your privacy. So, there is that sort of dynamic to it, and I find there's like, there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding of sort of what mediums do, or like with regards to the paranormal and that sort of thing, and a lot of fear there, which just sort of comes from, I suppose, people's own sort of preconceptions, or whether it's Hollywood films and stuff, how they are made out, whether we're all like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost, or at the time, or what. But I think it's like a mixture of things. So how did you end up coming over to the UK, can I ask, and working as a medium here? Have you practiced like as a medium most of your life, or did you sort of come away from it and then come back to it, or what sort of...
Sorry, Jazz.
Go on.
Sorry, Jazzy. Yeah, I'd like to know. So you trained in Malaysia? Was there like the same thing in the UK? Is it like spiritualist churches?
No, so just a little bit of background, just to give you a bit of context.
He had the more interesting question.
Having born in Malaysia, my grandmother was a psychic healer. I never met her because she very tragically passed away on my first birthday. She was actually coming to see me when she got... and she was coming to see me with a bag of jewelry that she had made for me as a 1-year-old baby. And she got knocked down by an army truck, and she died before she could come see me. But she's one of those people that I've always known as a child, visiting and being there with me, even though I didn't know her in real life. And her daughter was a medium, a trance medium. And in Malaysia, very popular, and people would line up on a Friday at 7:00. They know that's when she would be available in a little flat, and there would be a line of my mum would say that there would be just like long, long lines of people waiting for hours just to come and get a word from her. My mum, who I lost about 2 months ago, um, was also very psychic, very spirit sensitive, but she had a whole lot of fear with it. And my dad was he passed in 2005. He worked for the union, so he got to travel a lot. So he got to explore spirituality in India, for example. He lived in an ashram, learned meditation, yoga, a lot of information that he was very interested. But he was also very scientific, so he was always interested in the science of it and so on. So I grew up in this family that was very spiritually open, had a lot of experiences. My dad taught me yoga. I would see the asanas that he would do and try to do it as a child. And I learned to meditate with him. He's whenever I was stressed, his immediate response would be, come on, let's sit down, let's meditate, let's get calm. That's what he would do. Unfortunately, in growing up in Malaysia, it's probably very different now, but it is not a kind of place where they love spirituality. They talk a lot about ghost stories and so on, but there's a huge amount of fear. Mediumship. See, I was a journalist in Malaysia at that time. So I was, I knew I had to be neutral, but obviously, like a lot of media people, we were always very skeptical. I would see the so-called holy men and so-called mediums, and I would look down at them. They are looked down at because they are seen purely as charlatans. Because a lot of them would get, prior information, and they would just try to get you to spend money so that, someone's done something to you, so we need to do this ceremony to unblock it, etc., etc. There is also the practice, and I don't know how much you know about Malaysia, but Malaysia does have a lot of different cultures. You've got the Chinese, the Indian, the Malay, you've got the Muslims, you've got the Catholics, and so on. I mean, there are practices where people would go to the graves and try to get lottery numbers. I don't know how that works. You would go to a medium because there's lots of bad luck, things are not happening, everything's just lots of challenges or health issues. Mediumship, when I was growing up, was very much about the medium having the spirit of a god in them, a Hindu deity. All right, so you're not going to see a medium to speak to the dead, your deceased family. You're going to see somebody because they have the spirit of Shiva in them, or something like that. And there's a whole drama about how they get into when the spirit comes in. I sometimes demonstrate this when I'm doing my workshops, and it's a bit funny, but it's sort of like, doing sort of like incense, etc. And suddenly, you get this whole, I'm going into trance ritual. I used to see these people, and I used to go, and I used to, I'd be very skeptical, and I think they knew that I was questioning them in the mind, and they knew that I had some gifts. And I could get very, very into a very trance state very easily at that time as well, because I'd get very, I felt spirit would come very closely into me. But I had that fear. I was a journalist. I had that big fear, and I didn't want to have anything to do with the spirit world, because I'm going like, no, I'm a professional. I'm well known. I'm a journalist. I've got this career. I don't want to be one of those people. So I was protecting myself. But as both know, the more you resist, the more they come at you.
It's quite funny watching you say this, because I've actually, my background, I worked for the BBC for several months, but a lot of my training was through the media and stuff. I never actually worked as a journalist, but I've obviously I've worked in that environment, and I'm thinking you couldn't get two environments that would sort of clash. So I can't think of the word for it, but it's like, yeah, I can't imagine that was an easy journey going from journalist to medium. And
It wasn't. It wasn't. My first assignment as a journalist, they said, see, I have been, I was told when I started that I was a bit fluffy, because I turned up in a suit and high heels and tights, and and they're going, why are you dressed like that? Because my dad always said I have to look professional. So my first assignment was to go count trees at about a 2-mile walk or something like that. I had to go count all these trees. So they put me through, I toughened up really quickly. And then some of my assignments were turning up at the morgue after a traffic accident. So can you imagine, as trying to be. I remember there's this one particular accident. I'll never forget this. So I turned up. I was, rushed with the cameraman, the car, to this sort of flyover, and apparently there was a bad accident. Now, as I was walking up, I could see the river of blood just pouring down, coming down where I am. I was going like, oh my God. And it was quite late in the night. Now, as I was approaching, I saw this man, this motorcyclist, sat by the side of the road. And I was going, oh, thank God, at least he's alive. And I walked past this truck, something. And then I saw the same motorcyclist tangled up in the motorcycle. And then I was going, okay, so I guess that too, maybe they got the same helmet. And then I found out it was only one motorcyclist. So then I realized I was seeing the spirit of the guy over there. He was actually there. I mean, that was horrendous. I had to contain it because I was like, I better not tell the cameraman.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm not going to say anything. Then we had to go to the morgue. So can you imagine being an empath?
Yeah, I can imagine that night. Sort of going to bed that night. I wouldn't be. He was slept with the light on.
I know it was. I was terrified because I was just going like, oh my God, and I could see the guy, and then in the morgue I could see him sort of around, and his family was there and everything, and I was just like, oh my God, Angela, don't say anything. I've had all these massive experiences. Now with friends, I didn't work as a medium back in Malaysia, but what I did was that the people that knew me would know that I knew things.
Yeah.
So some, especially like even my dad would understand. He learned his lesson because there were a couple of times when I was growing up, and I say, I'll call him Appa, which is dad, and I said, Appa, don't go now, or don't leave the house. And he'll turn at me, and he was a lawyer, union man, and he'd like, what? Why? I've got a meeting. What are you talking about? And I said, no, it doesn't feel right. He says, well, I've got a meeting. I don't care whether you feel right or not, but I have a meeting. And then maybe an hour or two later, we'll get a phone call saying that he nearly had an accident or something, and his car broke down, or something happens. And then he started listening to me because, going like, okay, is it all right? I could see that he was trying to get reassurance. And some friends, but I lost friends because I tried to help them because I said something, etc., and then they use that against me. So I learned to contain it. But I moved to Sweden in I think the early 2000s, and I lived there for about 5 years or so, I moved to the UK. Now, it wasn't until I moved to the UK, and it was about maybe 6 years on, that I had, it should have been the happiest time of my life. I got married, had my big white wedding, I had, I even had family come. My mom, for the first time, came to visit me. So I had an amazing time. What happened 2 days after the wedding? We decided to have a mini moon instead of a proper full honeymoon. Um, and 2 days before, 2 days after I came back from this mini moon, so probably a week after the wedding, I fell at the train station and broke my rib. So I couldn't work for 6 weeks. I was in incredible pain. And suddenly I started hearing more and more and more my father. Could hear my father a lot more. I could see him. I kept dreaming about him. And I thought, oh, I'm going mad. And after that,
was your father still with us at that point, or had he passed?
oh no, he passed.
He
He
passed,
passed it.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So by this point, I thought I was going crazy, and I thought, oh dear, what's going on? And after that, I had a scheduled a small operation, which for my knee, and that another 6 weeks. So it was weird. I have first time in my career, so like I had this 6 weeks of recovery, and it gave me thinking time, and I kept hearing spirit was so prevalent. I mean, this house is very active anyway, but it was I at this point I never heard my dad before, never, now and then, but I could sense things. But for him, I'm home alone, and to hear him and to dream about him, I thought, oh wow, I'm going mad. And there was a series of things that happened where a friend died, and so on. And you know what I did? I said to my husband, I said, I know this is um, going to. There was an incident at a train station. I actually tried to take my life. It was so too much for me. I don't know what happened, and I had an intervention. Someone pushed me back from the tracks, and I sat at this bench for hours, and then went home and didn't go to work. I sat in the dark. My husband found me in the dark, and somehow I felt like I was in a daze. I was like, so I didn't realize that the whole day had gone. And when he found me, and the first thing I said to him is, I have to quit my job, and I have to find out what this is all about. I need to understand my spirituality. Obviously, you can see the blind panic on my husband's face at that point. Quit your job. I think that's the only thing that he understood. I said to him, I said, if something didn't help me today, that something or some being didn't push me back, you would be at the morgue identifying me right now, because that's where I was heading. And I don't know why, because I wasn't suicidal. I didn't have any need for it. As I said, it was the happiest year of my life. When this happened, I took some time out, did a bit of traveling, and I saw there was a course by Tony Stockwell and James Van Praagh in Edinburgh for 4 days. So that was the start. That was the beginning of this. I decided, I didn't know if I was a medium. I didn't know what I was. All I knew is that I could hear spirit, and I could sense things about people. I could feel things. I had out-of-body experiences. I dreamt things that would happen. I predicted. I dreamt about 3 months before. The very first time I came to London was in a year after Princess Diana passed away. It was the August. I dreamt that I was in a plane, and I dreamt I saw faces. It was a very lucid, vivid dream. And then, funny enough, one of my editors, said, "Do you want to go to London? We need someone to do a story about budget traveling in London." And I said, "Yeah, let's go." And in the plane, as I looked out, that was, I had a series of deja vus throughout. The faces that I saw, they were at Leicester Square. All of this, all these people that I encountered during my trip were already in my dream. So I had that so I had all these weird experiences. But it was at that workshop where I went with a friend, who was just curious. We were the only two people who were not mediums or international psychics or celebrity psychics or had written a book or done this and done that. But the very first exercise that I did with this beautiful lady from Ireland, who's a friend now, we had to do a reading for each other. And now at this point, you can understand, I've never done a reading before. So I'm going like, oh my God, I'm shitting myself. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
So you see, I couldn't just do it gently. I did it hardcore. I just went to I didn't realize it was like, some kind of advanced week or whatever, But anyway, so I sat in front of this woman and she said, shall I start? I said, oh, thank you. And she goes, I have a man. And she started describing my dad. And she said he was a leader. He taught, he always always stood in front of people and spoke. He spoke very well. He was very good at writing. I mean, she described him as she built up the picture, which is amazing. And the first thing that he said was, finally, he says, finally, you're here.
Yeah.
That was such an emotional moment for me, because then I realized that he had been driving me to that moment.
Yeah.
He had brought me to that moment. So I know that whatever decisions I've made in my life, I know that I have the validation of my father. From then on, I mean, that 4 days was amazing, because you cannot tell someone that you're a psychic or a medium. You have to come to that conclusion yourself.
Yeah.
Through your own work, through your own abilities. You have to see for yourself. And for me, for somebody that never thought she would be a medium or work in a spiritual way at all, that 4 days made me realize and understand my true abilities, that it wasn't just about hearing spirit, it was actually finding out, what is their message? Why do they come forward? Why do they communicate or connect? All of that made sense. Suddenly everything made sense. It was back when I was 9 years old when I saw spirit. Everything made sense to me. And from then on, that whole year was I think I just hopped and skipped through that year, because from one thing led to the other, and then ended up in the Arthur Findlay Spiritualist College, where I then had some remarkable experiences with tutors and also people from all over the world, and that's where the development came. So I've you could say that I'm my mediumship born in Malaysia, and what shall I say, repackaged in the UK.
There's a lot that you could say from that, because what I was really interested in, and what we tend to do, like I said to you before, is we pick out like an interesting thing that comes from, like, whenever a guest comes to us, we try and like get as little information on as possible. And like the biggest thing I'm seeing here is almost like from journalist to medium, right? But like the crux or the point there that really stood out for me, right? And I think sort of the bridge in that gap, the point where you took the leap from sort of there to there, is I have to learn more about my spirituality. There is a part of myself, or something's affecting me, or there's a part of my understanding I just don't have, and I literally have to take a step back. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at everything that we've had to go, we've gone through over the last sort of 6 months in the world, and I wonder how many people now are actually haven't been forced to take 4 months, 3-4 months, literally sort of like standing still, because of this virus. I wonder how many people are actually having that kind of crisis point at the moment. I need to find out more about this part of myself, this kind of missing piece of myself, because And the amount of times I've heard very similar stories of people being in sort of different positions where it's always been there, it's always just been below the surface, and there always seems to be like this crisis point where something kind of happens, and it's like sometimes these stories can be so, like, I understand it and I believe it because I've been through it myself. Everything that you've said I can personally identify with, and I'm sure you can as well, Rich. But it's like, for people listening and watching, you know, that's kind of, you've just summed up that journey, how you come from being in sort of one place, one sort of point of view. And I imagine that, you know, it's actually not as big a step and not as frightening a step in some ways as people believe it to be, but in other ways it's absolutely bloody terrifying. But it's how you're sort of gently pushed from one step to the next, like you were saying about the message you had with your dad. You know, I've had that message. I'm sure, Rich, you've had that message. Is, wow, you're finally here. You know, this is a point or a turning of the page as to from one chapter to the next, as to what gets you from here to here. And I just find that quite inspiring. I find that quite, you know, here's a question then. If you go back and look at yourself when you were saying about when you seen the motorcycle accident and you seen the times you were visiting the morgue, if you could go back now and speak to that person, what would you say to that person now, if you don't mind me asking?
To the spirit?
No, to yourself back when you...
To myself.
Yeah, before you were going on this journey, sort of, you know, the part of you that was the journalist, or the part of you that was kind of closed off, or, you know, trying to not draw much attention to what you were seeing, feeling and hearing, if that makes sense.
I think I would have told myself to step away from the fear, to explore more, to understand more, because at that point I didn't even want to know. You know, I didn't have that longing for information to broaden my understanding of the subject, that it was sort of like doing the, you know, I don't want to hear, I don't want to see, please leave me alone. I would have made more attempts. I mean, mind you, those days were I'm probably telling you how old I am, but it was pre-internet sort of Google time. So now, if you want to find a spiritualist church, you just type in your town or and country or whatever, and you can find all this information. You find lots of stuff on YouTube. In those days, you didn't have any information. But what I would have done is I'd tell my younger self to not be so scared and to try to understand. And also, I would have asked myself to then listen. Why ask spirit? I would have said to spirit, put the fear aside and say, spirit, why are you showing myself? And I didn't necessarily have to do a big show of it. I could have done it in my mind. You know, that's what I would have said to my younger self.
It's mad, because I think when you're going through it, these sort of transitions in life, and where you said about step away from the fear, how many times have you given messages and that actual message has come through? Because I know I have given several messages from loved ones, and that's one of the biggest things Spirit always seemed to come through and talk about, is this, in order to move forward, a lot of the times we've got to go where that fear is, so we've got to confront that fear, or we've got to understand where that fear is coming from. Have you noticed that when like Spirit giving those types of messages to others, or
especially when I'm doing helping people who have activity in the house, and a lot of the times it's usually people that are connected to them, and and spirit would be sometimes quite sad, just saying, I've been trying to reach you, I've been trying
Yeah.
to communicate, but all you've done is push me. I don't want to scare you, I don't want you to be upset. I come because of love. And a lot of the times, once I've given that message, the people then feel a bit more relaxed about it, and then they come back and say, oh, Angela, this happened, before
Yeah.
a light flickering, even if it's just a faulty, even if it's a light bulb that's about to go bust, the fact that the light flickered, it's like, oh my God, that
Yeah.
kind of fear. But then once they start getting understanding that it is actually grandpa that's coming to see the new baby, it is the owner of the previous house that's just come there because he loves that house, he lived there till the end of his life, then you become a bit more relaxed, then you can live with spirit around you, and then the fear sort of dissipates.
Becomes fascination as well for a lot of people, doesn't it? Once that fear goes, they become kind of fascinated with it, and sort of for different people they will go different lengths. Some people are just happy to fascinated to have the odd bit of activity around them. Other people will go a bit more extremes, like me and Richard did. Rich, do you have any questions?
I was just thinking about, Angela, your transition, where you said you went to meet James Van Praagh, which that would have been quite a thing, because I watched him for years. And I think, like, from my point of view, it was the acknowledgement that what I'd seen all my life was real in that moment, had become something, and not just me, sort of like on my own making it up and, imagining it. But I think it was almost like being put together. Like, before that moment, I was always apart. I was always in little individual bricks. And then sort of like I just became more the person I was, me, basically. And I sympathize with that, going through that. It's a big thing to go through. That big change, and it's not just like, oh, this is what I'm going to do for a living. It's the whole aspect of it. It's taking on board all that means, and all that your life has led up to that point. So yes, I like that story. That's exactly how it was for me. I know Jazz has said the same. There's so many people have come to us with that same story, where spirit wait for that moment, and they will choose it when you're vulnerable. They'll choose it when you're not. They know exactly what will kickstart you on that path.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating. It fascinates me because it's so thought out.
Yeah. I mean, the spirit intelligence is just outstanding. I mean, I hate it because I'm a paranormal investigator myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say investigator. I work with a company, and I'm the medium. And it's just sort of like, oh, come and light the cat ball, spirit do this, spirit do that, like, and I tell people, the spirit are not show monkeys, okay?
Yeah.
They're not in the
Yeah,
circus.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They are so intelligent. They are so, I mean, so recently, as I said, I lost my mum in the middle of this pandemic in the US, about 2 months ago, 2.5 months or so. It's been quite hard as a medium, because she being quite psychic and so on. So I had assumed that she's just going to turn up.
Just want to say I'm sorry to hear about that. By the way, I wanted to say that earlier when you mentioned it. It's just you kind of went on straight onto something else, and it was like, wow. So I just thought, as you mentioned it there, I thought, right, if I don't cut you off now, right, I just wanted to say that, because I truly I am. I know what it's like to lose people. So
yeah. She went through, it's interesting, you talk about a quiet time. She was isolated for 4.5 weeks. in the hospital. Her phone was stolen, so we didn't really get to speak to her. So it was a horrendous time for the family. But what I was very, very interested was the fact that, watching it as afterwards, after I'm still grieving now, but I'm also able to start sort of digesting the whole thing. The fact that they isolated her for 4.5 weeks in her own. I mean, there was hardly she didn't have glasses, she couldn't see the TV, there was no entertainment, nothing. She was just in her head. And before she passed, and then as she was passing, she went into her self. So I assumed that after she passed, that I was just going to have like this amazing, because she was psychic, she's going to go into a spirit world like that, and she's going to come back, and she goes like, Angie, look, I'm back now, and we're going to have all this amazing conversation. She has done some. I've had amazing. I have had experiences with her, and there's been fantastic things. And I was kidding. I wasn't kidding about the cat ball, actually. I actually have a cat ball next to her picture, and there are times where it just lights up on its own, and she responds based on questions. So it's amazing. So Paranormal Kid is fantastic. But recently I had this desire. I felt, is this all just in my head? Am I hearing things because I want to hear this as a medium? So I had a reading with somebody quite credible. It was interesting. The first things, some of the things that she said was, I feel that your mother spent a lot of time on her own in a bed. So I had a lot of validation from her. But what she said that really, really touched me, beyond all the evidence, was, she said, your mother says that she was quite a spiritual, religious lady. She says what she thought about God, what she thought about the afterlife, is different to what it is where she is now. And guys, do you know what she said? She said, it is even more amazing than what I thought it would be. And that just gave me goosebumps when I heard that. I said, oh my God, and I'm a bit jealous of her as well, because I'm like, oh my God, Mom's experiencing all these things. And it is amazing when you get that kind of information from spirit, to say it's even more amazing than what we thought about, what we have all been thinking, reading, hearing about the spirit world and about God. So it's one of those amazing things that's come out of her passing.
We've had
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
That's amazing. It is, and it's that's the thing. We've had very similar experiences when working. And I just say to people to ask me about like people I've lost, and I was like, would you ever want them back? And I'm like, well, the selfish part of me, yeah, of course they would. But also, who am I to deny them of that experience? Because I believe wholeheartedly that they have moved into somewhere new, and I've always believed that you can maintain a relationship with them. They don't have to be here in the body. That relationship is just as valid as any other relationship you will have in your life. So that's tremendous validation from what you had there. So what are you sort of working on nowadays then? What sort of what sort of work are you pursuing at the moment, and sort of what are you seeing within your work? Are you seeing any sort of changes surrounding sort of what's been happening in the world more broader lately? Are you seeing very similar things to what you normally see? What's sort of happening around you at the moment?
Well, the readings, the people that my clients that I am noticing, is a little bit back to what you were talking about, how this last 4 or 5 months has given us a lot of thinking time, a time to stop and take stock of life, take stock, because the problem is, like, even before I had my awakening, you can call it, is that we were all hamsters on a little wheel. Because I was a very busy, very, very stressed, very busy. I was in marketing then, marketing and events. I was extremely stressed, extremely busy. Coming home like a lot of people my age, coming back on the train after a long day's work, just thinking about a glass of wine, crisp, cool glass of wine, to just unwind. I did not never stop to take stock, never stopped to think about why am I hearing spirit? Why am I seeing this? Why is this dream important? I was on the surface, I was doing a lot of things which were spiritual. I was, I would follow the moon, patterns of the moon. I would do rituals. I would do certain things my mum would say to do because it's a ceremony, it's a festival, all of those things. But I never really stopped and took stock. And now I'm seeing a lot of people who who are thinking, oh my God, is this, which direction should I go? Yes, I've got this fantastic job, but I'm not happy. Yes, I'm very happy in my relationship, but then I don't like my job. So, all these big questions, very, very, I feel a lot of people have come to a crossroads, and thinking about the next steps, thinking about their own, there are two things happening. One is the individuality of the person, as in my needs, my material needs, my life direction, my soul direction. And then the other is thinking about the rest of the community, the rest of the world, looking at the sort of, sort of, this is life, but what is there? What more is there? So a lot of very big questions. As for me, it's been an interesting time because from the very start of lockdown, I had to deal with the fact that my mum was ill, and then she was in hospital, and then she came home, and then she passed, and then the grief, all of those things. The moment, this is how I love spirit, the moment, almost a day or two before, suddenly, before she went into hospital, I suddenly had a lot of people cancelling appointments, rescheduling, etc. And I started getting worried. I'm going like, oh my God, it's locked down. I can't see clients. What am I going to do for money? Blah blah blah. The usual concerns. And then, boom, 2 days later, then I heard this, and I didn't, I was teaching. I do art as well. I'm an artist as well. So I was doing a lot of live art classes on Facebook, and it got me through the difficult times because I was doing something for people who were in lockdown. There were children that were following my art lessons, and it was fun. It took my mind off things. But then I didn't have any reading, so I was like, oh my God. And after she passed, and then I think it took about 2 weeks or so, and suddenly, boom, people started calling me. I said, Reiki Spirit, I know you stopped it when you knew was right, and you're starting it because I'm ready. Like, I didn't need to say to myself, I'm ready. They did it for me.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a kind of a limbo state because, yes, lockdown is starting to lift, but there are so many things that we have to consider. We have to do the COVID risk assessment. We've got to have venues, places to work out of that are safe. We have to clean after each client. I've got basic things to think about. I work with angel cards. I've got 78 cards. Do I laminate every single one and wipe every single one after each reading? That's going to take me an hour.
Yeah.
So I have to think about this sort of little things, and at the same time, people are at the stage where they're outdoors and a lot of things are opening up, so they naturally expect me to be face to face, and people like that face to face touch. So I'm kind of thinking about how I'm thinking about my next steps. What is my next sort of how am I going to operate? But I think for a lot of spiritual people, it's taught us a lesson not to limit your availability, because I know there are lots of mediums who can be very old old-fashioned, where they want to hold the client's hand and do that personal big hug at the end and things like that. And they fear doing a Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp, all of that, because they are not sure if it will work.
Yeah.
So I've done Skype and Zoom readings for for a while now, and I'm always like, before a mediumship reading, I mean, I kid you not, I do say, "Come on, spirits, please show up." You know, I mean, it's not because I'm not confident, but sometimes they can be a bit like, exactly. Fingers crossed,
I've been sat in front of the odd person, like, I have nothing for you. It's just like, I've had that happen to it once or twice.
I always tell people, though, whether it's a Skype, Zoom, email reading, or face-to-face reading.
Oh, we seem to have lost you there, Angela. Say it again. Richard, are we still...
Mediumship. I always tell people.
Yeah, we got you back. Go on.
Okay. I always tell people that mediumship is not Skype. I can't dial into Skype and get, ask Grandpa to come through, or Aunt Essie and Uncle Tom to come through. So it's basically opening that door and letting see me, allowing myself to understand and feel and sense who's coming through.
Yeah.
But people can sometimes, who do not have an understanding of how it works, do think that they can come, book a reading, sit in front of you and say, "I want to speak to Tom."
Yeah.
And I want to speak, and I want him to say specifically, So it's quite interesting. The other thing that I do, which came after 2 years after the mediumship, working as a medium, again, I went to, where did I go? Oh, Egypt. And the very next day, went to a spa, and language barriers, whatever, this woman jumped on my back and she started using her knee to massage my back. So she pressed up behind my heart, and I had a heart contusion. So I ended up in a Muslim country in my swimsuit in a private hospital, and understanding that I had a contusion in my heart. So I couldn't move my hand for the duration of the 2 weeks. I couldn't swim. I was quite miserable. But that night, after a long day at the hospital, I couldn't sleep, and I had visitations.
Yeah.
And I had visitations by different people, and I had written down, and it said, "Why is there pain?" And it said, I had written down, because I saw this the next day, "Without pain, there would be no love." Okay, I remember those words. I had written, why is there pain, and talking about my own pain, I suppose. Without pain, there would be no love. And I had this face of this man. I've actually painted him, and he's a guide. I had I drew quite a lot of faces and wrote a lot of things on this my Samsung Note, and the next day I went down for breakfast, and right next to the breakfast area was this artist. And Egypt, you got this amazing artist, and I ended up chatting with him, and I showed him some of the things that I have painted before, and he said to me that I copy things, I can replicate things, but you are so original that people who are original will get far, something like that. So I found it really fascinating. And after I came home, I started drawing faces of spirit. I knew, you see, as a child, I used to doodle a lot. I used to draw faces. I never knew who they were. But I realize now that I've actually had this, ability for a long time, but I never really focused on it. So now I am a spirit artist. And the night before my mom died, I drew quite a few faces as because I didn't sleep. I knew she was going to pass that night. So I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was sat there, and I felt all this energy coming around, and I started drawing faces. And I put the picture up on my Facebook page maybe a few days later, and it was picked up by somebody and said, "This is my father." And she showed me the picture. It was quite, it looked a bit younger version of himself. I've had my drawing now has changed to, it's more specific, it's more lifelike. So since my mother's passing and during lockdown, I've had a lot of spirits come to be drawn, to have their portraits drawn. Yeah, I mean, I'd be watching something silly like, Big Bang Theory, and suddenly I'd be like, I actually now have a box with my pencils, my pastels, my pencil sharpeners, and my books. My sketchbooks, because and my husband knows that suddenly if I go quiet and I start sketching, then say, "Oh, okay, you we've got friends then." Yeah. In the house. Yeah. And recently I had this amazing there were three amazing faces that I drew, where one was like really, really specific, and another, I drew this face, posted it. I was sort of like, it's quite late. I think it was about 11 or so. It was quite late, and I thought, no, you have to put it on now. So I took a picture, put it on Facebook, and next thing you know, within a few minutes, this gentleman's daughter got in touch with me, and she said she and her mother had just been talking about him, and they were not usually late people. They go to bed really early. For some reason, they sat up that night talking about him. And just before she went to bed, she was scrolling for Facebook, and she saw my picture right then and there. And literally, I'd probably say about 3 minutes after. And guess what I said? Guess what I did then? I had to sit there messaging her, giving her that.
We're breaking up again. We're losing you again.
Saying I pressed anything. All right, okay.
Go on, carry on. We got you now.
Yeah. What I said was, it's not portraits that are going to end up in the National Portrait Gallery, okay, but they are representative of spirit. And and what happens is, sometimes they give me a few bits of information, and in this case I had a few bits that were quite specific, and then once I got that connection with the sitter, boom, it just pours out and makes that connection. And the third one, which was quite significant, it was seen by this gentleman's wife 10 hours after I posted it. I said there was a connection with football and a blue color blue or blue shirt, and names of so much information. And guess what? The picture, she was with her husband, and what color t-shirt was he wearing?
Wearing a blue shirt.
Blue. Yeah.
Blue football shirt.
Yeah. And all the information, it was quite a tragic story, actually. She wanted specific information about how he died, but there was so much information that came through. But I was just going like, wow, that's the result. It's just all the information that I had actually put on about the fact that he had two children, that he should have spent more time. He had regrets about not spending time with them, that he was away from home, he was this, all that about the children, etc. All, she was like, well, I was browsing on Facebook and you popped up. So, we talk about spirit intelligence. How amazing is it that the husband knew that the wife was going to be on Facebook at that particular time, and and I was going to pop up. That mother and daughter, the fact that he knew that 3 minutes after his face was going to pop up with the information, and they were going to be stunned. It was just, I think spirit is so underappreciated.
We have a
I agree.
we have a story. We put a public event on, and there was like 26 to 27 people turning up at this event. And this husband, who had passed from having a heart attack, stopped every single person coming, except his wife and daughter, because she was in such a place of grieving that she needed our help. And every single person, by them two people, turned up at our event. They were the only two that came, and everyone else cancelled because of some. Do you remember what it was exactly, Jar? Something like that. It was because the weather, wasn't it?
It was because of rain, and literally they had bought tickets. They'd literally put money down. We had to pay the money back because it was actually to raise money for the British Heart Foundation. Yeah, and we had several tickets sold. We had enough to cover the room. And 2 people turned up, and those 2 people needed more help than probably anyone else that would have turned up to that event.
And this is what the husband had said. He'd said he'd caused this, so we could just give her our undivided attention.
We've had it with another one. It's the second ever case I did with you, where we went to this house. This lady was having activity. Her very young daughter at the time was seeing this boy, and they we had one of our team members to research what was going on, and Richard and the other guy he worked with at the time had already been investigated, so they asked me and my partner to come in and give further validation to the family. And as soon as I walked into the property, I had the feeling of like something was wrong with my chest. I felt as if I couldn't breathe. And I had to go immediately to the bathroom, and I found out that this boy had drowned, and I was being shown the father to this little boy, and he was doing this, a bit like follow me, but just bring it, like, and he led us. I asked Richard, and Richard was getting something very similar, and the 2 girls were getting the same message as well. And we literally took a walk across this town, and none of us have ever been there. It's like where we live in the Welsh Valleys in Wales. It's like there's certain areas that, unless you live there, there's no reason to go there. Unless you live there, or people who live there, there's nothing there. They've got a corner shop, house, and maybe like a chippy or a Chinese or something. Nothing sort of worth travelling to then. So we went all the way across this town. It took us about 45 minutes, and we got into the brightest house. We got into the street, and I remember my partner said it will be the brightest house in the street. And it was Richard, because I'll put my hands up. At the time, it was my second case. I didn't have the balls to knock on the door. And in all fairness to Richard, I don't know if I still would have the balls to knock on the door, I'll be honest. And he had to knock. He knocked on the door, and said, "Look, we've had this haunting. This is such and such. We've picked up on this little boy and this guy, and it was the mother, and the spirit had took, and she was having friends over at that point. So when she had that message, they had made sure on her side of things." And they always that she would not be on her own when we left, and it was so overwhelming that all of us, I think, were in tears. And spirit, when we do the ghost box sessions and we do the different things that we've done on this channel, there's one question they always ask, and they say you should always ask this question anything you do, and that is this the loving way? Because every time I can cite at least 10 examples now where I've asked spirit a question, and sometimes they won't give a direct answer because you're supposed to find that answer for yourself, or there's certain things they won't come and say. especially on like using paranormal side of things. But that's one of the things they've always said is this the loving way? And you always ask that question. And when people do go through that transition, and I think we can, when you've been through that transition, because you're kind of in a kind of little bit of a new state of being, in a sense, you are a lot more calm and stress-free. You forget of the the absolute upheaval that it took to get you to that place, and then when you revisit it, you're often surprised by just how far a journey you've travelled, and you realise, like you've said, Angela, each point, as each domino fell in that journey, that brings you to where you are now. And all three of us here are still on that journey. You know, I haven't got to the end of that journey. I've got plenty more years left. I'm sure it's the same for you guys. But, you know, every single person that you're meant to meet on that journey, everything you're supposed to do, everything that's supposed to sort of happen around you, what you're here to learn, what you're here to understand, or what you're here to accomplish, it's always done in the most loving way. And what I always say to people is, like, I've given up trying to figure out how these things happen, because whatever I think it is, it ain't gonna be that, because they always seem to incorporate that side of the unknown to it, that you just know something significant is happening, you just don't quite know what significant is happening a lot of the time as you go through this journey. It is. Thank you for sharing that, Richard. Is there anything further you guys wanted to ask about?
I'd like. So, you know, you say you do like paranormal events, then, do you? So you do like where they go to buildings and stuff like that, yeah?
Yeah.
Are you finding that people are coming on these events? Are they a bit more clued up about the paranormal, or are you getting the same old? Let's make the lights flash. Let's get the things to buzz. Let's get the things to beep. Or are you finding a bit more respect?
Well, first of all, if Mark and Linda, who I work with, Fright Nights, they're listening, they know that I'm quite strict, and I always set the tone. I'm not going to have anyone mess about or disrespect spirit on my watch. You know, there've been one or two where, you know, when you're right in the middle of it, thick of it, and you're trying to concentrate, you're trying to push past like 20, 30 people's energies past, you know, and trying not to link to them psychically, because I don't want to know what type of curry they had this evening. You know, I'm trying to push past all whatever anxiety and everything and bring spirit forward and communicate. And right in the middle, as you just got spirit, and then you hear the whispering and the nudges and, you know, all of that. And I'll just go, do you have something to share with the rest of us? You feel like a school teacher sometimes, but you have to be, because it ruins the experience for the more serious people, you know. I remember being in, where was it? I can't remember whether it was in somewhere in Kent or Essex, but this had a history with the Musketeers, and I think Oliver Cromwell and so on. So I had in this gorgeous little, actually it was just a very nondescript little room, but I felt it was this older man at the beginning, you know, felt this really sickly man describing all the illness he went through and all of that stuff. And then a musketeer came through. Now, in my conscious mind, I'm like, oh my God, is this real? You know, is it really, you know? But as he was describing himself, and I mean, the cat balls were going wild. Okay, the K2 meters were crazy. A lot of people there were feeling his energy. They felt his sadness, because he brought forward a message of understanding about who he was as a person, that he, he felt more feminine in some ways. And these are kind of things he would have never been able to discuss at that time. And in the middle, of bringing his story and describing him, and somebody says, "Can't you bring another spirit in? This is boring." Why is he telling us? Why is he telling us all about all of this? And I tell you, I didn't have to say anything. The looks that everyone else gave this person was like daggers because they were all feeling it. And the moment this happened, like everything, the cat ball stopped flashing, the K2 meter stopped, and I said, because we have asked him to come forward, we've asked for this communication. I can't pick and choose the spirit that comes through during a session. When I came downstairs, this people, they left. They went off in a huff, because I wasn't rude to them. Everyone else in my session came towards me and said, "We are so sorry, Angela." I said, "Why are you saying?" "Because of that. That was ridiculous." They were all feeling it. They were all really, they felt the emotion. They felt this gentleman, and they were so upset. So the answer to your question is, you see, that people, there's usually a fantastic group of people who are avid paranormal investigators who really want to be interested and really want to know. And then you find that a lot of people who are curious about spirituality come on this as well, because they want to feel, they want to sense. You occasionally get the skeptics, and you occasionally get, and skeptics are okay because they keep us grounded, they keep us on our toes. But it's the ones that want to be annoying, and they just want to have a laugh at it. They're not interested. And I might get that, like, once in a while, and because I try to set the tone to be quite strict. And, when I'm speaking, please don't speak, because I have to concentrate. I try to explain how I work, so then they understand the amount of energy and the concentration I need to use. So the other people become the champions, because they want to get that experience, because they've paid money to experience and explore. They don't want it to be, messed up because somebody else thinks it's a joke.
I'm quite harsh. I am, as Jazzy will tell you, I am quite harsh. We've had a few experiences where we've helped someone, and they've been quite rude about it, right? And like, we are going there, me and Jazzy have gone there for free. It's our time, and then you're going to dispirit. Yeah, we find that quite, we get that quite often, Jad, don't we? Mm-hmm. And then by the time we leave, they kind of turn the corner. They're sort of like, oh, because I got no qualms if you disrespect. And I find that we've done paranormal events as well, me and Jazz. And I leave it to spirit. Sometimes we've been in situations, we did one where people turned up and they've been drinking. Yeah. And I was standing at the front of the stage, and I can remember saying, "Right, spirit, what would you like me to do? If you want me to tell these people to do one, even though this is charity and we need to raise the money," and spirit, in their wisdom, have gone, "Leave them, we'll deal with it." I've gone, okay. That's kind of been a thing that I've that's happened a couple of times. It's gone, "Leave it to us." I've gone, all right. The
good thing about Fright Nights is it's in the terms and conditions, so they're very strict about alcohol consumption and behavior as well. So if they are going to misbehave, then it's all in the terms and conditions, quite strict. So I'm very lucky with that, because I think that when, as a medium that goes into a public setting like this, I'm being very vulnerable.
I've been very similar with that. Is like, no drugs or alcohol. You always find there's always one or two that will just slip past slip past the net, and I think that's mainly what we've had. That specific event was, as you said, as a charity event, but No,
Yeah.
There are people who've asked me to do events, and it's like, psychic in a pub, and I'm like, yeah, well, actually, it's not a good idea, because most of the time people are going to be drunk, and mixing those two things isn't a good idea, because
I don't. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think that mediumship or psychic or mediumship is suitable in a pub setting. We want to do it in a place that people are going to take it seriously, because you can have a laugh with spirit and you can bring a lot of joy, but it is a serious business,
Yeah. But spirit have taken the time to defy the laws of nature and communicate with you, give you a moment of spiritual awareness, and you're going to go, oh, it's boring. I'd explode, see. I would make that person. They'd want to leave.
You didn't see the smoke coming out of my ear.
Yeah, I would not. Seriously, that would. If somebody said that to me, I'd say. And I've had friends do it. They've asked me for. I've got a couple of close friends who ask me all the time. They get worries, as we all do in the world, and they phone me up and they go, "Rich, can you give me a bit of heads up on that?" And it's ridiculous sometimes. And I go, "You want me to ask spirit to break the laws of physics, to defy nature, and you want me to give you that message specifically on that subject, which you're going to make, which is a big decision in your life? Is that what you're asking me?" And they go, "Oh, well," and they change their mind. Because I've said, think about it. What you're asking, think about that's a decision you have to make. You can't get answers. That's on you. Spirit are not going to do that for you to go, oh, that's the one I'll choose because Spirit said so. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
There's so much to it because people haven't got a clue at the. It's not just like there's a ghost every sort of 100-year-old pub just sitting there going, oh, I wonder if they're going to come tonight and with their K2 meters like that. It don't work like that, like. That's what people think though. They got a smoke guy going, oh God, I've been here for about 8 years now. I don't know. So I don't know. It is a funny thing, like, but it is like you said. It's such a journey. This is the thing I love. The stories that come out of it. It's not just like you. I've had the experience where I've had to help someone who has basically had a near-death experience, and that's kicked in something in them. Now that's a different kettle of fish. That is a big deal. But when that's a different ball game. But when you sort of go through this journey from a young age, and you see it, I found it a bit annoying that I got the clarity when I was like coming up to my 30s. I would have liked the clarity when I was younger, but in me having the clarity, I've helped families with young children who are connected to spirit, and they are building up that clarity at a younger age. So when they get to the age I was, they'll have a different understanding again. So, it's how you look at it, it's the perception of it.
Yeah.
There's so much to this story. There's so much to our journeys when it comes to the paranormal and spirituality. And there's always that similarity as well. It's amazing.
It is. I mean, it took me 30 years before I actually did anything. Before as I said, Malaysia didn't have spiritualist churches. Spirituality is still, every time I try to speak, even with clients from Singapore or Malaysia or from Asia, there is still that excessive fear about spirits. The understanding of spirits is very different, and it's all very negative and very scary. And why would Grandpa why is Grandpa coming to speak to me? And then the other hand, there's a huge curiosity about angels, huge curiosity about crystals and healing and all of that. But it took me a long time before I could courageously seek information and try to understand. And the way I try to put it, the easiest way to put it, is just because you can drive a car doesn't mean you should. You've got to. I don't actually have a license, but I understand the mechanics of it. in the sense that you've got to understand your car, you've got to understand what works, and you've got to have some sort of obviously need your license and all of that stuff. But just because a car moves doesn't mean you just get in the car and just move the car. This is what a lot of people that are, recently awakened. I've known people that have been awakened in 1 month, and then within 3 months they've got a Facebook page and they've got business cards. You've got to understand, you've got to learn, you've got to develop. You've got to learn from people who have done it before. And I know the word training and development is something that people laugh at in spirituality, in mediumship and psychic. But yes, you need to train, you need to develop, you need to understand how it works, why it works. And for example, if you're not comfortable in your own energy, how are you going to know when spirit steps into your energy, when the blending happens? Right? So you've got to sit in your own energy and be comfortable. If you're scared of your own space, how are you going to it's a case of, oh yes, I've got spirit here. Yes, I feel it's a man. But you can't get beyond that.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's not so much like don't get me wrong, there is the element where you get people in a room and you can take them through meditations and get them doing readings and that sort of thing. But a lot of the training and development isn't actually written or formal training and development. It's like I always say to people, there's a quote from a film called Dodgeball, a bit of a funny old film, come out in the noughties, but there's a quote from that, and I've always found it to be true, is how do you know when something is truly right? And it's you feel it. And it's like you can intellectually understand something, but it's only until you go through it or experience it that you actually gain a proper understanding of it. And a lot of those times when you're on this journey means that, and I say to people when I'm helping them with development, expectation creates limitation, because if you're expecting things to happen one or two ways, you're negating all the other ways the universe could manifest this, whatever you want to happen. Take it step by step, but also know you're gonna mess things up. You're gonna fall flat on your face a good few times, and be okay with that, because that's how you learn. And you once you go through something and you understand it, you never lose it. And that took me a long time to learn personally, because I was realizing that I was doing things and I was growing from them when they were coming into my awareness. I had a period last year where I had a lot come into my awareness in a very short space of time, and I realized that I was integrating things that I was worrying about 3 weeks ago, and now were just not second nature, but like I was doing them as a matter of course, because I had this complete different understanding, but I had to go through these experiences to acquire that understanding from my point of view, because beforehand I only had what other people had told me, or any experiences I had which were very similar but were actually quite limited. So I tend to find that it's a process of learning that takes many different forms.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, there's no quick way, there's no magic pill, no magic quick fix to get where you want to be. And also there's no hurry. I don't understand why everyone is in such a hurry. Development takes time. When you think about all the the pioneers, Gordon Higginson and all these people, they had home circles for years and years before something happened. And everyone's sort of like, if you do like a circle and you just had a nice, meditation, etc. So that's not enough. I want something explosive, something.
Enjoy the journey.
Yeah, and it's about, and I know I do it quite slowly with my people, and some of my I just a shout out to Claire who's watching. She's actually She used to come to my circle as well.
And Gina and
It's
Adrian as well. I'd like to give a shout out to.
hello, hi everyone. Um, it's really about, there's no hurry. There's no hurry. You have a lifetime. It happens when it's supposed to happen, but be relaxed in your own energy. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. Because if you're in it, because I, the thing, I encounter a lot of people, it's like, oh, I've got a spiritual crisis because they forget that they are human beings.
Yeah.
They're not saints. They're not this ultimate guru that's enlightened. You've got bills to pay. You've got children to look after. You've got mouths to feed. You've got a body to look after. You've got stress. You've got all of those things. But then if you elevate yourself in such a place very quickly, you're not then. So and then all this crisis keeps coming up, and you're not facing it, and everything big rolls into one big problem, and then it's a spiritual crisis. I need to take some time off from spirit. So that it's one word that I never use because it's life. Because it's life. It's life, isn't it? Because you've got to deal.
When you're going through a spiritual crisis, you'll know it. As I say to people, you will know it because you won't be going, I go through a spiritual crisis, you'll be sat in a corner, in a dark room, rocking back and forth, going, I don't actually know what to do with my life right now. And you will literally have no idea of what's going on. When you're there, then come and talk to me about being in a spiritual... Like, don't get me wrong, no, I don't mean that nastily, because there are times where that can be preempted, but I think sometimes that is... It's weird. It's like, if I didn't have that time in my life when I actually went through that, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. Guys, we're coming to the end of the show because it's coming up to 9:30. Is there anything you guys would like to say to round things off? Angela, it's been absolutely brilliant and fascinating speaking with you this evening. I've really enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed meeting you guys and talking about, God knows, we've been to Malaysia and back.
Do you know what? It's been
lovely. It's been lovely, Angela.
We've barely spoke. We've had our splurts, but we've just let you tell your story. And really, the stuff you've covered in that story, absolutely excellent. I might change the title if you don't mind, because I like the idea of from journalist to medium. Because I think that kind of sums up, that journey you've taken. Is so I might amend the title slightly, but Angela, I'd love to have you come back on the show again at some point.
Oh, thank you, definitely.
What we'll do when we're making videos, because what we're going to do, we're slightly changing up the way we're making videos on the channel. We are looking to podcast these episodes, so I'll talk to you about that later on. So we can find ways of obviously getting this out to other people, because there's a lot of stuff that we've covered today. I think it's going to be useful to a lot of people that will come across it, hopefully in the coming weeks. And what we'll do is I'll let you know about how we'll I hope there'll be a chance for us to work together again in the future.
Yes,
it is.
Very looking forward to it. Thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely. If you want to stay on the line till after the end of the show, I'll have a quick chat with you. Rich, any final words, my friend?
Yeah, in regards to what Angela was saying then, you've got to think of, if you give a message, how you're going to deliver it, what it means, and how serious it is, so personal responsibility, and that journey, having a guide, or having someone to share with, takes the pressure off. And it really is genuinely a good idea and good practice to sit in a circle. Because if you're wanting to amaze people with your mediumship, that's ego. And if ego's involved, you're never going to progress, because that's always going to hold you back. There's so much to this process. So, yeah, you are correct, and you need a group. You need to be somebody. If I had somebody who'd had the T-shirt 15 years ago, I would have relished having that sort of information. So yeah, think it's not just picking up the cards and amazing people and doing this. It's a process. And you need to cover.
And
you need to know all about it.
From my point of view, like circles never worked for me, and I was always told from a young age that they wouldn't. I worked in different ways. If a circle isn't working for you, don't be surprised to reach out for people. Ask. Don't be scared to share what you're feeling with people. Connect. See if you can connect with people online, or if there's people in your inner circles that might be open to, or might have had similar experiences, or whatever you're going through. There's always a way. You just need to sort of, you've got to, and I think as Angela, as you put it, you've got to want to explore it. You've got to want to explore it, and the way, it doesn't necessarily mean
what it means.
Yes, it doesn't necessarily mean you become a medium. Because that's where a lot of people have a misconception. Oh, I'm doing this because I want to become a medium. I want to become a healer. I want to become this. I want to become that. No. It starts with the question, I want to understand my own spirituality. And Absolutely. That's what I was told when I was first starting this. If you want to do this because you want to... When I first started this journey, someone asked me, so why do you want to do it? And my response was, I want to talk to the dead. And he replied, why? And I had to really think about that. Now... I was doing it for the right reasons, but I just didn't realise that I didn't want to admit it. So for me, personally, it was about finding a community, or finding what worked for me. So as Rich, as you said, as Angela, as you said, you guys, honestly, talk to people, find groups, find circles, find things that work for you, societies, paranormal groups, or whichever way that kind of just ask questions.
Yeah.
Anything further, Rich?
No, that's him. That was lovely. Thank you for coming on, Angela. I loved it. Amazing, beautiful stories. And I will, send me a link on Facebook, and I'll come on your page and I'll send you a friend request, and hopefully we'll get to do something in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. We'll speak to you. Thank you for watching the Now Debate. We'll see you again next week. There will be some more videos coming soon to the channel. We're just having a little bit of a break, but you'll be seeing new videos coming in the next week or so. But we will be back here every Wednesday for the Now Debate. Take care.
Take care. Love and light, para peeps.
Bye.